Circle, and today we're going to be looking at some of the units in my Thousand Suns army. This is going to be the range of vehicles, monstrous creature, my allied Forge World, and we'll finish off with the Mastodon itself. So, without any further ado, let's get started. So, I brought out my Legion Praevian, just for scale reference. He's only a tiny little chap because pretty much all the stuff that's floating around here is pretty big. So, let's find a zoom that seems to work nicely for this. These are from the Forge World, Zhao Arkurian, I believe it's pronounced. But, you know, I'm sure something's getting lost in translation there. The colour palette for the Forge World that's being shown in the artwork is this sort of bronze colour with a bright green. Oh, just snap the melter off, Macca. Good one. Bright green trim. So what I've done is painted a metallic green trim, just like they've done, with a scroll of wording through the green strip. That's what they've done over at Forge World in their artwork. So yeah, looks pretty good, I think, all up. I don't know if I can get it to focus in on it, but damn well try. So yeah, something like that. Overall, Kesselaks, still really cool models. I like them a lot. I still think they should probably not be monstrous creatures, because to me there's really no difference between them and a Dreadnought. We'll get to that in a moment. Next up, I'm going to have to zoom out a little to get this guy in, is the Magus for my allied house. As you can see, it's not insignificant in size. This guy is huge because I converted him. I think the Abeyant, which I've got all the original spare parts here from Forge World, the Abeyant is kind of ugly. The Magus is definitely ugly. That's the original legs for the Abeyant that go on a 60mm base, and then the Abeyant would go on top. Now, of course, you can see there's a slight size difference between these legs and these legs, or tendrils, legs, whatever you want to call them. This guy is huge. How huge? Well, that's a Contemptor Dreadnought, and the very top of the Egyptian crest, which makes this taller than the average Dread, barely comes up to the first first level of the control consoles on the Abeyant. So yeah, pretty fucking big kit. Looks so much cooler though with this Walker body on. Painted all these nice bright red lenses in there because, you know, lenses are fun. Gone for a real glassy metallic theme to them. Painted the silver trim like they've got in the artwork, as well as if I take the Magus himself out, I went for a metallic green on the consoles that fades into a black, almost as if it's been scorched away. It just ties the green theme in with the rest of the army, because I think green is a great accenting colour for what I'm doing with this Mechanicum force. I've taken a little bit of green in that strip on the shoulder, and I've applied it more in bulk. So I've kept the main panels, the plating, the outer cladding in the gold and bronze, but yeah, I've gone for the metallic green to really make it pop. It looks great next to Thousand Suns to have this green and gold, a really patriotic Aussie, oi 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 colour scheme. With the Magus himself, I used the 40k one. I think the 30k one is kind of a shitty sculpt. Not a big fan of it at all. Yeah, it's grimdark. Yeah, not a fan. What can I say? If you don't like something, you just don't like something. Sometimes it's not their fault. They didn't do a bad sculpt. I can tell what's what. I can tell everything on it. it's a little derpy. Not as bad as the Snail Man. He's probably the worst. The Magus is still a pretty big guy, even when he's on foot. Size-wise, he is bigger than Terminator, I dare say. So, but he's painted with again, I'll try and get some focus on him. He's painted with a mix of the greens and golds as well. So, really dark greens deep in the crevices, and it works up to a light green with some golden highlights, some golden decals that I've applied to him, this runic work. And I've tried to make the weapon look like similar to a Volkite or a Plasma more than anything else, to try and blend it with the Volkite theme that I've got going in the rest of the army. Of course, painted the vials on the back in green. Was tempted to put them blue, but then I'm like, what the hell blue liquid is there? So, yeah, and of course an Archaeotech pistol for good measure. This is actually a really cool kit, one of the coolest kits I think they've come out with in 40k in a long time. And I gave him the wizard hat. There's a couple of different ways you can kit out the Magus. I gave him this tall smoke pipe type wizard hat, because, you know, a bit of a mage theme since they are a Thousand Suns aligned house. Next up in this little collection here is my Contemptor Dreadnought. So again, size comparison, pretty big next to Joe Blogg's infantry. The one downside of painting Thousand Suns is they're metallic red. The minute there's any light, like I've got coming through the window here, it starts to go white and glare coming off the model. So you've got to try and have areas of shade around you where you can try and, maybe I can use my hand to try and help shield the light from it. But yeah, it's really hard with metallics to show off, but there is depth to them. There'll be darker patches and brighter patches of metallics, and overall the paint palette on it I've used is pretty much identical to Forge World's layout. White shoulder trim, white for the Legion symbols, gold for pretty much everything else. Green eyes in the Dreadnought because I've gone for green. Again, it's that one colour that's tying everything together. The green and gold is in Mechanicum, and it's in the Thousand Suns. Weapons wise, Volkite Calvarians, twin linked because they're absolutely brutal. This Dreadnought has paid for himself, magnetised, paid for himself several times over in killing Horde armies. I think Volkites are the go-to weapon currently for killing hordes of infantry in 30k, for those who are curious, and Ballistic Skill 5, twin linked, you're gonna hit. You've got 8 shots, you're gonna hit, you're probably gonna wound because they're strength 6 and they'll instant kill militia. So, keeps the hordes off your back. Next up, we have my Veteran Squad Rhino. So, this one is large enough that you can actually see the contrast, the darker patches of metallics that I laid on before the Tamir clear red that went on top. You've also got, I used a Legion banner icon, which is, this Rhino isn't entirely finished. I've still got more weathering to do to it. Not battle damage, like weathering. So I'll see if I can get that into focus. Thousand Suns, really cool. Obviously I've cut the decals so that in theory I could open and close the hatches if I wanted on the vehicle. On the front there, all my Rhinos have this white stripe, and then they've usually got some sort of pattern here on the other side. If I get more Rhinos as time goes on, I will probably add more patches as well, but for the moment I think that's more than enough. Really cool looking vehicle. I love these points of contrast. As you can see when I turn it, tiny little dot of contrast builds right up as the shadows cross over. So metallic paint schemes, they're a bitch, but once they're done, they look fantastic in person. Of course, I've also got my Command Rhino. So the Command Rhino has a lot more love and affection than the standard Rhino does. You can see it's also fully weathered and battle damaged. There's a lot of sort of mud and grit and streaks coming down the tracks, but not too much. We're not World Eaters, we're not Death Guard, we're not Iron Warriors, we're not going to be covered in shit. We're not a legion known for fighting in the muck and the mud. The actual Legion Oribus symbol on the front here is stenciled. I cut out a stencil using tape and airbrushed them on over some chipping medium and chipped them back, obviously, because they are a bit worn and battle damaged. Added a golden scarab on the front here, as well as a Siege of Geigenhive honorary on the right hand side. Sorry, as you look at it, so left hand side of the vehicle here, which I've torn out with a toothpick to make it sort of look authentic and worn. I haven't torn out the Legion symbol yet here, the golden scarab, not sure if I will, but yeah, I've also used some blues around the brass on the windows to make it look like corroded bronze. The satellite dish itself, lots of use of green lenses on this, and the way I painted it with a dark blue metallic in the center of the dish, just to add some color depth to it, because the flat silver was rather boring on its own. So that's the Command Rhino. Next up we have one of my Legion Laser Destroyer Vindicators. Now, the Vindicators are a funny one. I wanted to include some sort of tanks in the army, but I couldn't decide what I wanted. You see, Medusas, Basilisks, Thud guns, Demolisher cannons, battle cannons, I put them all off limits to myself. Just as a fluff thing, I think Thousand Sons are such an arrogant, pompous legion that they would try and use what they think is the most advanced technology, as opposed to crude but effective. I think they would try and make a show to other legions of their advanced technology and how good they are, much like the Emperor's Children in a way. But less about physical perfection, but more about showing people how perfect you are, if that makes sense. So same sort of thing here as with the Rhinos. What I've done is I've created these golden siege shields, just as a way of adding colour, and I've put some decals and markings down them, Mechanicum themed ones. The golden shields are of course corroded as well, only softly, mostly in the crevices, just to try and hint at that, you know, ancient, worn, weathered look. Use the golds around the I guess you call it gun mantlet, although it's not really. Perhaps barrel heat shield, something like that, heat sinks. Anyway, looks really cool. The laser destroyer itself, as you can see, I've used a very dark blue, then blends into a brown gold, and then finally into the silver of the barrels. Just a bit of depth to the colour makes it more interesting. Green lenses again in the vehicle. The symbols on the side are a decal over the top of a airbrushed, just taped off section I airbrushed. Same on the other side, obviously another airbrushed Legion stencil. Nothing at the rear apart from a bit of mud and battle damage. Again, very hard to show with the glare of the light. On top here, I've gone for very corroded power couplings and generator unit, like they've been made out of bronze in some ancient lost time. It's just history to the Legion, breaks up the colour red a bit because the primary colour can be overpowering. Alright, so that's all the vehicles. Now let's get into the slog. Well, that isn't going to fit on camera. This here is the Legion Mastodon. She's big. She is fucking huge. If I put one of my Rhinos next to it, everyone knows how big a Rhino is. That's a Rhino. The front track sections, although they look like a Sicarian's, are completely different. They are much smaller. That's about the actual size. So front track section, roughly the size of a Rhino. in comparison, probably about an inch shorter all up. What I've done with it paint-wise, I've gone for blacks as the accenting colour. Anything black is going to be reference to sort of more elite forces in my army rather than white, I think. Except on the Veterans Rhino, which has that decal obviously on top of the hatch. Golden Erebus up in the corners on both sides. And of course a Legion symbol and golden scarab down here on the track. Just went for a really simple Egyptian, if I can get it to focus in, really simple Egyptian symbol on the back hatch here. That's my missus getting home from personal training. And the Siege of Geigenhive medallion again on the side here of the vehicle. Now, with the way that the weaponry has been done, obviously had to magnetize it in order to get full range of motion. So the lenses and the weaponry itself has to pull off the vehicle. Makes it easier for transport as well. You're not going to be snapping the tips off barrels, things like that, which can be a real problem. Laser cannon as well, magnetized. And on top here, the anti-air armament. Again, that same theme of blue barrel tips with gold secondary color, and of course fully magnetized. It's not like you can get a weapon destroyed in a super heavy, but it's just better to do it that way anyway. Green lens again, because I think the metallic green is again the signature color. Sorry for the repetition. And lots of battle damage around the edges of the shield, which again is black, because I think it looks cool. Now, with the Mastodon itself, up top here, I've gone for a mix of golds and silvers on the void shield generators here, and the, I guess, melter generators down here. That's a theme I've also carried on to the internal generators, and there are internal generators for here. The top hatch here is removable on my one, in case I want to put a standing crew member in there. Haven't decided on doing that yet. And I used a Mark II crewman and upgraded him with the focuses in, a KM pattern upgrade set. It's the one problem with using, I have to use a very interesting lens for doing both close-up and long-range shots this video, rather than swapping lens constantly. Problem is, it can only do one job, well, it can't do any job well. It does a good job at everything. Anyway, vehicle has this really cool front hatch and rear hatch, and yes, they both open. Yes, this is dirtier than the other vehicles because of the size. It's got this reddish tinge to the mud here and clays, because I used a mixture of 4 weathering powders, red, yellow, green and brown, in order to get these effects. And of course, rear hatch opens up like so. Anyway, let's go into it, shall we? First, off comes the top. Next, we have the entire front hull section. I find that you tilt up and pull off works best. I have an incredibly tight fit on mine because I'm a fitter and turner by trade, mechanical engineer, and I sort of build this sort of, well, not this sort of stuff, but mechanical things for a living, and I pride myself on tight craftsmanship, so not a single crack or gap at all. It is a very good fit, and I'm very proud of what I achieved with that. I know a lot of people have shimmed it up and have bended and hit it with heat guns, but I didn't need to do any of that. So inside, again, generators are done. All the lenses in the vehicle, internal lighting is this metallic green light with a gold trim on it. I just think it looks really cool. Again, that green accent color, I love it. 2 magnets at the front here. Those holes are pretty much pre-sculpted, coming out of Forge World. same on the rear of the vehicle. There's a magnet slot in here, and of course that also translates to magnet slots in the back of the hatch and 2 magnet slots in the front ramp. We will get there. There's a lot to show on a Mastodon. I also went along and put magnets in on this part here. So there's magnets in the sides to help it hold into the hull, which has mating magnets in here. And of course there's magnets all around the front, because this bit and this bit slot together. The magnets aren't there to make them fit entirely, but it's there to help with the alignment process when it all goes together. And of course I also fully painted the inside of even the top hatch. Magnets, what can't they do? So inside the Mastodon, well, now that it's fully assembled, both hatches open, and if I zoom in, you'll see that these pistons here actually operate, if you've built it correctly anyway. I know some people have given up on the interior of the Mastodon, sadly, and have glued it all shut. I didn't. I made sure everything worked on it, because, well, fucking spent the money on it, didn't I? In hindsight, looking at it, I probably should have painted these little lights down in the very bottom. It looks like there's actually a row of lights, which I've missed. So that's going to shit me. I'll have to come back later and paint those. But overall, it came up really cool inside. There's a lot going on. It's very worn, battered, battle damaged. You can see sort of grit and stains, especially on this back ramp, because on the back ramp, I can show it to you in the light. So you get a mix of sort of browns, and there's a lot of sponging, and I used mostly weathering enamels to do this work. I'm really proud of how it turned out again. I think fantastic model overall. I don't think it looks entirely Imperial. Looking back at other Imperial tech, there is a video I did on the first Mastodons that were previewed. It is different because of the 4 tracks, not the 2 tracks. The tracks, they're not coming up the full sides of the vehicle like on all other Imperial tanks. You know, they get these big full-size tracks that go around them like World War I Mark 1 tank. Mastodons don't, for whatever reason, but I think it works, and I don't want to discourage creativity from Forge World. Yeah, there you have it. That's a good mixture of some of the units in my Thousand Suns army, and my allied, of course, detachment over here from the Mechanicum. I do have a Thanatar and half a dozen more Castellax still to build. Actually, it's about a dozen more Castellax still to build. I still haven't decided on Tech Thralls or Myrmidons, Thalax, any of that kind of thing, so that's why there's only Castellax at the moment. I bought like 2 dozen of them or on buy, swap and sell page for pretty cheap, so that's the only reason why I got the Castellax at all, because I could get like a dozen at the cost of like 3 retail. They'd been primed, built incorrectly, arms back to front, things like that, and these are all salvage jobs, but hey, you can't tell. I don't think so. Yeah. Anyway, next time we'll talk about some infantry units, show off the banner, some of the custom parts that I've used throughout the infantry, and that might even be by the time the Prospero boxes arrived, so we might even get Araman in there, as well as some Thousand Suns veterans and a few other things. Anyway, thanks for watching the video, and we'll see you all next time.